Welcome back, everyone, to the Innovative Agency. Great to be with you again here today. It's Sharon Torek. And, after having done this for just 200 episodes, we just hit our 200th episode a little bit ago. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
You can't see him, but today's guest is dancing in his seat to that news. You learn a few things here or there about what agency leaders most like to talk about and hear about. And we've covered a lot of cool topics, talked with a lot of cool experts, but I know that what you all like to hear about is growing that top line. I get tons of feedback about our episodes on growth, on revenue increase, on business development. And so I'm really excited today to have someone who's been on both sides of the fence. Today he works with agencies to help them scale, but he also helped an agency scale significantly. And so, whether your goal is to get from that 6 to 7 figures, or whether you're at 7 and your goal is 9, he has been there, and he's going to share perspective today about how he got the agency he was with there, and maybe give you some things and inspiration to think about today as you think about scaling your agency and what the best pathway for you to do that might be. So Quinn, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
It is an honor to be here, Sharon. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
It's my pleasure. So you are a veteran of a digital marketing agency that scaled from 8 to 9 figures while you were there. Do I have that right?
Correct. So in 2015, I joined a company called Scorpion. And at that time, they were doing about $20 million in fees, not just ad spend, but fees. And then by the time I left at the end of 2021, we were doing 150 million.
Okay. That's impressive, obviously. And for those of you who are starting to zone out a little bit, we are going to talk about things that are relatable to you, whether you're at 5 figures or 7 figures right now, because really we're going to get into a conversation about what are the things you need to be thinking about and what are your best opportunities for scaling to get to that next level, whatever it might be for you, because not everybody wants to be even a 7-figure agency. Some of you are running lifestyle agencies and that's not your goal. And some of you definitely want that 9-figure amount, either to make an exit or to attract investment, whatever it might be. So let's start, take a step back. I've looked at enough of your content to know that you and I have something important in common, and that is that we really believe in the power of focus and specialization as a marketing agency. So let's talk a little bit about that. And how did you come to that point of view around business development or growth when it comes to building your agency to the next level?
By the time that I had joined Scorpion in 2015, I'd already been in the sales and marketing space for about 17 years and had a lot of experience, but it wasn't until I arrived at Scorpion that I really learned this lesson about focus and specialization. And in the case of Scorpion, verticalization. When I joined, it was, as I mentioned, a $20 million business with 1,000 customers, primarily in personal injury attorneys. And I remember when I was interviewing for the role to be their first marketing hire, meaning the first person to focus on marketing the agency to the world. And I remember being in that interview. I was interviewing with the new head of sales who had come over from a company called Reach Local. And he and effectively, ultimately, I were brought in to really help scale the business. But I remember a moment in that interview, I was in this sort of generic conference room with the fluorescent lights, and it was an empty room, and it was just me and him. And I was asking him about the business. I was trying to educate myself more about Scorpion. It was actually called Scorpion Design back then. And he said something that was, it was unexpected. And I didn't really believe him at first, to be honest, but it was that they had a 93% customer retention rate.
Wow.
And for any agency of any size serving any customers, that's fantastic. But in the case of Scorpion specifically, was personal injury attorneys, a lot of local service businesses who inherently have turnover, and they change they change situations. And so the fact that they had that customer retention rate said that there was something really special inherently with this business. And so that interview led to me accepting an offer as their chief marketing officer. And what I learned in the early days, weeks, and months of working there is that they had really built something that was kind of like lightning in a bottle. What it was a combination of specialization, so that they had this large concentration in personal injury attorneys, but also a deep care for the customer, right? And so the challenge that I was presented with as their first marketing hire was, how do we grow this business aggressively? Like, we really wanted to grow more. We wanted to reach more people. And that was driven by the founder and CEO, Rustin, who is, just ambitious by nature, but what he really was driven by was he wanted to help more people. He wanted to reach more people so that he could help them to achieve their goals. And so the way that we did that at that time was it was a 9-person sales team, mostly subsisting on inbounds. In fact, all subsisting on inbounds. They didn't pick up the phone to do outbounding because they were very comfortable taking inbounds. And the way that they got inbounds was every single Scorpion client would get a new website. And Scorpion was started in 2001, early days of the internet, early days of SEO. And so over the years, they built this client list of all these personal injury attorneys who had Scorpion websites, who were all SEO optimized, that would have a link to Scorpion at the bottom of all the websites. Yeah. And so we had effectively 1,000 pieces of marketing collateral in these websites that were pointing back to us. And so how attorneys shopped back in the day was they would, how they would shop for a new website or digital marketing is that they would go to Google and they'd search for personal injury in San Antonio or whatever market they were in. They'd see who ranked in the organic results because that's what they wanted. And they'd find a Scorpion website. Sometimes they'd end up calling the Scorpion. And so the sales team was very, they drove nice cars. They had a good lifestyle. They were just, enjoying that. But it was a very informal process. And so one of the things that I helped to do was to formalize the inbound process, meaning we brought in things like a CRM and we did lead scoring, but then we also brought in outbounding. And what I mean by that is, in order for us to hit the revenue goals that we were setting for ourselves, we had to not just rely on what was coming in the front door. We had to do something different. We had to start going outbound, and brought in a whole outbound methodology. And that ultimately led to us doubling the business in a very short period of time, just bringing in this outbound motion. So I'll pause for any questions there.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's a good breaking point. When you concepted your outbound strategy, how did the focus on vertical niching and specialization factor into your plans? How did you execute it? And to what degree do you believe it affected what's obviously a successful initiative, because you doubled in, I'm guessing, a fairly short period of time. So talk about the role of niching and focus and going narrow and deep versus being generalist as an agency.
Perfect. So I'll continue talking about personal injury attorneys. However, for context, over time, yeah, no. For context, we actually did target additional verticals, and I could talk about how we did that, but I'll stick with personal injury attorneys for now, just for context, because it's really important. So to answer your question, I think the question you're asking is, how did specialization hurt or help our ability to be effective in outbounding? And I think the reason why it helped us tremendously is it gave us a lot of clarity on where to focus our efforts. So I'll give you an example. Personal injury attorneys is a very specific type of business. It's a very knowable sort of universe of businesses. We can identify what is our total addressable market, the total number of attorneys who are of the size and shape, if you will, of personal injury attorneys that we would want to target, but we know that we could help particularly. And so what we would do is, because we knew that those were the clients that we had a lot of success with and a lot of track record and happy clients and all those great things, what we were able to do was to go out and build a list of all the personal injury attorneys in the US. And we were able to map them across all the cities that we had personal injury attorney clients and the ones that we didn't. And we'd use that as a targeting mechanism for our outbound. So we knew exactly who we were going outbound to. And then from a messaging and a positioning perspective, everything we did was specific to law firms and attorneys. We would, of course, showcase our success stories. Our clients were the heroes of the story. It wasn't Scorpion. We were helping them to achieve, their ultimate goal. And so we were very careful to make sure that we were very relatable and we had a lot of credibility specifically for the law firm. And we could talk more about how we did that. But the other thing that we did, I think is really interesting to talk about, is that we didn't just rely on email or phones to be able to build relationships and conversations with these personal injury attorneys. It was a very low success rate back then. It's even worse today, doing cold calls and cold emails, and people still do it. And I think it's a valid way to do things today, even to some respect. But back then, what we would do is, I'll tell you a little bit more context. What we would find is if we cold call an attorney, they would have a gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. Right. And the gatekeeper's job was to make sure that the Scorpion salesperson would not get access to the personal injury attorney, because back then, just is true today, personal injury attorneys get targeted by a lot of agencies. And so there's a lot of inbound interest. And so the gatekeeper's job is to make sure that doesn't disrupt the personal injury attorney's job. So what we did is, instead of just relying on phone calls, is we would send them gourmet cookies in the mail. And I'm talking about like a beautiful tin of cookies, like delicious cookies. And what they would do is it would be FedExed into the law firm, and either the attorney themselves would unpack this, because it's an overnight FedEx, it's an urgent document, urgent package, or the gatekeeper would, and inevitably those cookies would end up in the break room. It's before COVID, but they'd end up in the break room, and then people would be enjoying these gourmet cookies, and everyone's sort of talking about, well, who brought these amazing cookies? Like, where'd they come from? And inevitably, the Scorpion name would be shared across the office. And the next time the Scorpion salesperson would call, we went from a high level of resistance from the gatekeeper to, oh, hi, you're the Scorpion guy that sent us those cookies? Hold on, let me put you through to the attorney. He wants to talk to you, right? Yeah. Completely reverses that energy through a level of reciprocity, right? And so we figured that out.
I think it's worth mentioning, though, as you sort of relate how you built on this, that I mean, that's a tactic that even a generalist agency could use. But the difference is, as a result of choosing a target that was not broad, that was narrow, you were able to find the right people to unleash that guerrilla effort onto, right? I mean, we weren't just sending them to auto body shops, car dealerships, personal injury firms. It was intentional. I mean, we could all send cookies to a list, but the magic there is in who's on that list, and you develop the list as a result of your niching and your specialization as an agency.
To take it even further, yes, and to take it even further, the note card that would go in there was personally addressed to the personal injury attorney, and it would reference something that would indicate the fact that we were insiders to their world.
Right. I think that's so powerful, and it calls to mind actually one of the favorite pieces of content that you publish on your firm's site, which is about this is sort of the flip side of the positive flip side of the real world challenges of going too broad, which is the actual title of an article that you wrote. And I'd really love to talk about and highlight the challenges of going broad, because you can't do what you did, what you just described, and in my view, or achieve the results that I'm sure you achieved with that campaign by going too broad. So let's talk, if you don't mind, for a minute about the real world challenges of agencies going too broad in their targeting, And a lot of agencies, they use the rationale that they don't want to inhibit their creativity. They want to try lots of different things and get exposure to lots of different types of tactics and clients. And that's great, but I don't think it pays the bills as fast at the end of the day as a narrow approach. And so
Yeah.
let's talk about the challenges. The first
Yeah.
one you mentioned is resource challenges.
That's right.
Yeah.
So as an agency, you the more broad you go, the more things are ineffective. They're effectively more customized. They're more manual, and they take more time. They take more thinking time. They take more processes. Just adds complexity.
Mhm.
And so as a result of going broad, you don't get the benefit of specializing. One of the big benefits I'll share with you at Scorpion was we had from an operational perspective, we cared a lot about client experience. And the only way that we can get to 14,000 clients and also have a premium client experience was to operationalize the business with custom software.
Mhm.
And the only way we could write custom software is if we had very clear processes that were repeated over and over and over again that would allow us to get good at those things and ultimately write software. We had this sort of mentality where there was think of it like a factory line where it's an assembly line. And we built this assembly line based on our experience of doing, servicing the same customer over and over again. And let's just say it's a Tesla factory line. And if you put a Volkswagen in the Tesla line, assembly line, you're going to gum up the whole system because it's going to be out of whack. And so, one of the big benefits, of course, of specializing is you're going to be able to systematize your business.
Right. Let's talk about pricing because
Yeah.
you mentioned pricing challenges.
Yes.
Broad versus niched. So let's talk about that for a minute. What's your experience been there?
Sure. So if you are if you are the founder and you're doing direct sales and you are pricing every client on a bespoke basis based on the scope or the size and the nature of the engagement, that becomes untenable when you have a sales team. When you have a 1 to 2 to 3 person sales team, being able to price accurately becomes very problematic, and you end up overpricing some deals and losing them and underpricing others and losing money. And so that becomes a challenge when you have to map the pricing to the variety of clients that you have.
Yeah. I think this links really well to the next challenge you mentioned, which is customization challenges, which I think is just a different way of talking about what you just said, right? It's everybody's expecting you to tailor make
Correct.
a potential solution for them. Also, scope creep's such a huge issue, and it's such a knife that cuts into profitability that I would imagine specialization or being narrow and deep helps you avoid that scope creep too, because you've seen enough patterns that you know exactly how to scope the work and what's out of scope.
Yeah, and that gets into the conversation around productizing services, which I know you talk about on this podcast. If you are very clear about who the customer is and the problems you're solving, you can create a product that meets their needs, exceeds their needs very well from their perspective, but from operationally, it's very streamlined as a result.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about some of the real world challenges that you saw the agency face when it got more intentional. It sounds like they were already pretty intentional, but you got even more so as you were growing it to that next level of revenue. Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges that you faced? Because it's never as easy as it looks in the rearview mirror.
Gosh.
Through it.
We were not perfect by any stretch. And it was definitely learning through experience and figuring out what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But I think that the biggest benefit to us being able to grow through those periods was just a real clear focus on it, specifically who we're serving. Mm-hmm. If we had the additional complications of trying to manage companies and businesses as clients of all shapes and sizes, that additional complexity would have seriously hampered our ability to actually make forward progress as a business. You know,
You, as you were honing this and getting more and more effective as an agency at it in your business development efforts, are there things that you would do differently now than you did them when you were implementing to grow?
That's a good question. And what would I do differently? I just saw such a massive impact relative to our competitors. Our competitors were sort of generalists serving SMBs, and their client retention rate was closer to 50%, which means that they had to replace half their business every year. So sales and marketing was very, very expensive relative to the cost of, or the revenue. And so it was very easy to win deals against generalists. They just didn't understand our business, our client, I should say, as well as we could. And I'll give you an example, like, a company, let's say like a web.com or a Reach Local, some of these larger businesses that service SMBs at scale, they didn't have the relationships in the personal injury attorney world that we did. They didn't have the client results that we did. They didn't have, the case studies and those things. And so it was very easy to win against those. And so for those reasons and many more, I think, the go-to-market strategy of focusing on a vertical and becoming a true specialist in that vertical is really the right way to grow an agency. It's not the only way, but in my opinion, it's the right way to grow an agency in today's competitive world.
So you're on the other side of things now. You're coaching and counseling other agencies. Presume that your client's already a believer here. How do you get them? What are some of the first steps that agencies need to think about taking to be more honed and to focus more narrow and deep versus being more generalist? What would be the first maybe 3 things you would walk them through doing to move in that direction?
So I think, and I walked through this personally at Scorpion. I've also interviewed a lot of agency owners who are specialists in their vertical and who've been wildly successful. And so I'll share with you what sort of the common themes are from this experience. Number one, obviously, if you have an existing agency and you are a generalist and you're suffering from some of these challenges we talked about earlier, innovation, lack of innovation is another big one, which we should talk about. But if you're struggling to grow because you are dealing with customers of all shapes and sizes, one of the first things I would do is, you have the benefit of experience and a lot of clients that you could look in your book of business, whether it's current clients or past, to understand which types of clients that you really enjoy working with, you get the most value, do they get the most value, so on and so forth. So really getting clear on which target vertical, if you were going to go down this road, which one is going to be the one that you want to work with. There's some level of interest or affinity. And then from a quantitative perspective, that there's data to support the fact that they are indeed a good customer of yours, and that they get a lot of value out of you. In other words, you're good at solving their marketing problem in this case.
Right.
That's number one. Number two is, I would validate that. Make sure that, let's say if you wanted to go after, if you wanted to target mold restoration businesses exclusively, well, that may or may not be a good fit based on the size of the market. If there are only 1,000 of these businesses in the US, that may not be enough. It might be, depending on your financial goals, right? So really being able to clearly validate that, hey, this business, there's enough of these types of businesses out there that we could see ourselves, if we applied a lot of focus and energy over the next 18 to 36 months, becoming sort of a known expert in this field, that there is enough of them for us to be successful and hit our financial targets. And so I think that's a good starting place, is really getting clear on who do we really want to target, and validating that. And then from there is a lot of the sort of next steps that I work with my clients on, have to do with getting really smart about who that customer is, and that you do that through interviewing them, asking them, what was the situation before you hired us? Like, what were the pain points that drove you to make a new decision? How did you buy? Why did you buy? Those type of questions. differentiation is extremely important in the agency world, because most agencies will default to things like, well, we care more, we try harder, we have senior, executives on your team. There's a lot of that type of thing. But if you are a client, you're talking to 3 agencies, they're going to be saying a lot of the same thing. So how do you differentiate in a meaningful way to the specific buyer who you're selling to? And then packaging all of that into a go-to-market plan around inbound, around outbound, and relationship-based marketing.
Mm-hmm. So you alluded to innovation in a minute ago, and I wouldn't be a good host of the Innovative Agency podcast. I didn't explore that a little bit further with you. I think innovation is crucial. When we started the show, it was to definitely always be able to take a look around the corner at where the agency world was headed, what was happening next, and focus and specialization. Your point of view is that it helps you be a better innovator as an agency. So
Correct.
Talk a little bit about that, and maybe some client experiences you've seen that bear that out, and why that's important for agencies to think about.
God, it's such a timely topic, especially with the with the world of AI that's we're all kind of transitioning into. Who knows what it's going to look like in a couple of years? But what's clear is that there is a lot of opportunity for agencies to innovate, whether it's operationally or the products and the services that they provide as a result of all this new great innovation in the marketplace. And I think the challenge that agencies who are generalists face is, how do we find the time to get all of our clients, continue to service all of our clients of all shapes and sizes, doing all this custom work, and also figure out, like, how do we deal with this new changing world, and how do we make a better product or service for our clients in doing so. And so that's another reason why, frankly, I think specializing is a great way to run an agency, because you get all these operational efficiencies. Not everything is custom, everything is productized. And so as a result of that, you're able to sort of lift your head up from the business a little bit more and focus on, how do you take advantage of these new innovations in the marketplace.
Well, and to me, the analogy that comes to mind is, look, if you are studying for your finals in your second semester of college, you're probably going to have 4, maybe 5 exams. So you've got to study in all subjects to be ready to do well. If you are later on in your college career and all of your courses are in one specialty, right? They're in your major, you really only you're only constrained by that one client vertical or that one industry to think about the impact of what such a major development like AI or any other major industry event will hit your client target base. You don't have to think about how it's going to affect the clients and customers of the agency on the street. So from an efficiency perspective, being innovative and pattern spotting and thinking high level and applying those trends and world events to your own backyard of clients, it's just so much more efficient, it seems to me.
It's more efficient. And frankly, my opinion and my experience is that the insights that you'll gain from what's happening with AI are going to be more profound for your clients, because you're going to be able to give them specific advice versus generic advice that would fit any small, medium-sized business. Instead, my wife is a physician, and she is now exploring with Chat GPT because it's a tool for businesses of all types, right? And so if there was a specialist out there who understood AI and Chat GPT, and a specialist in that world, as well as with working with physicians, that person would be very valuable to someone like my wife, because she's not going to have the time or day to figure it out. And she doesn't need just generic advice about Chat GPT. She wants to figure out, how could she serve her patients better? How could she, improve their lives as well as the operational life of running her own practice?
That's a terrific analogy of cross-sectioning a particular industry vertical with a particular body of knowledge and how they intersect and what it means for the clients that your agency serves on a day-to-day basis. I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Corey, this has just been a fascinating discussion. It's always good to talk niching, and agencies love to talk business development, and I'm pleased that we've been able to sort of blend the both together.
Yeah, me too.
Where do agencies go to find out more about how you help them with all these scaling questions and issues and niching?
Thank you so much. Yeah. So I would say the best way to get in touch with me and to get more of this type of content, if this is interesting to you, I would advise you to join my daily tips newsletter. I send out an email 5 days a week, and it's all about this type of content. Sharon, looks like you've peeked into my archive, so you have a sense of that type of content.
Yeah.
But it's a great place to start. I also host a podcast where I interview founders of agencies who have gone through this transition of being a generalist and then transitioned to being a specialist. And then as a result of that, have been wildly successful. That's a great way to hear from other people, your peers who have gone through this transition and have some really interesting advice to share.
Amazing. Well, maybe we'll find some other agencies who have walked along this path and have good stories to share with your audience as well.
That would be wonderful. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I so appreciate you lending your expertise today. It's been a great conversation, and I thank you for sharing your perspective with everybody.
My pleasure, Sharon, and I look forward to helping to support you. And when this episode comes out, I'll definitely be sharing it across my network.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode of Innovative Agency. Until then, be well. Take care.